Hello and welcome to the Second Tier Podcast. I'm Ryan Dilks and I'm joined by the shutter of a ladsy to my Liam Rosenior. It's Justin Peach.
Good day to you, Ryan.
Welcome to the number one championship podcast, the Second Tier. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. Well, the next time you were meant to be hearing from us was the Second Tier Awards with our team of the season. That's still being released tomorrow. Don't fear on that front on Wednesday morning. But of course, as you'll have seen from this episode title, we have some massive news to discuss. This is an emergency podcast, and it's because Hull have sacked Liam Rosenior. It comes after they finished 7th in the Championship this season, missing out on the playoffs on the final day. He, of course, was even nominated for the EFL Championship Manager of the Season not too long ago. In a statement, the club's owner, Achon Ilachali, said, "This it's become evident that our visions for the future are not aligned, and I feel that now is the time to make a change. Our philosophy is clear. We will continue to drive this club forward, and whilst doing so, I will continue to be open and transparent with our fans." Justin, I think the reaction on social media to this tells the whole story. This is mental.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. It's an interesting one and an odd one. I think the timing of it, obviously, is probably a good thing with the timing because they've got good time to prepare for the summer, for pre-season, get someone in quickly. But at the same time, despite missing out on the top six, I do think Rosenior is the right man to lead the club into promotion contention. I think next season would have been a much more competitive division for Hull City. Where you've got outliers this season. You've got Southampton, Leeds, and Leicester with the huge budgets that they've got. Ipswich being a remarkable side. It was a difficult championship this season, and unfortunately, Hull found that out. But for me, I think they're very early on in a long-term project under Rosenior, or they were, and now they've bolted a little bit. It feels like they've bolted. They've changed too early, I think would be the suggestion I would go with.
I'm not sure they've changed too early is correct, because I don't think they should have changed at all. Because that's what it seems to imply when you say that, Justin. I mean, I've seen some people say this isn't surprising because of the amount of backing he got in the January transfer window, but that's just utter nonsense for me. When Rosenior took over at Hull, they were 21st, right on the edge of the relegation zone, and in the space of a year and a half has got them on the edge of the playoffs. He has transformed the club, because before he was there, they were ambitious, but they weren't getting anywhere on the pitch. And He's come in and taken them to a new level. And yes, they signed some big names in January. However, they didn't sign a striker in the absence of Liam Delap. So they've basically been playing midfielders up front. And even though they did go big in January, expecting them to get the top six off the back of that would be really naive, because it's not that simple. They were 10th at the end of January and have just missed out on a playoff place. And you've got to think of it like this, right? Two of the teams in the playoffs have the biggest budgets we've ever seen at championship level. And then they were just picked to the line, Hull that is, by two sides who were better than them. So that's not a failure. This is extremely harsh, I think, Justin.
Yeah, and I think as well as that, you've got West Brom and Norwich, who are a lot further along than Hull in terms of their squad, how their squad's taken shape. They've both got Premier League legacies in terms of their players. Obviously, like the likes of Josh Sargent, the money that was spent on Gabriel Sara was Premier League money from last season, for example. David Wagner as well is, I would say, well, he's not been in charge as long as Rosenior, but he's got...
Both those managers had ridiculous seasons, didn't they, compared to
what was
expected of them? And at the end of the day, only 4 teams can finish in the playoffs. And as we have alluded to, 2 of them were massive sides with ridiculous budgets at this level. And then the other 2 were just very, very well coached in the end. And that's it, isn't it? Not everyone can finish in the playoffs.
There's that. But again, like I said, those 2 teams have only just edged Hull, despite being further along in a process than what Hull are. And I think as well as that, a little bit of context for Hull. I was looking at Kieran Maguire, the football finance expert, and he was saying Hull have got the 16th highest wage budget in the Championship, 17th most expensive squad, 19th highest revenue, and they sack Rosenior for not finishing in the top 6. Yes, that will change ever so slightly based on the next season's results. And obviously they spent relatively big in terms of loanees in January, but at the same time, the club was progressing. It was progressing in the right direction. So I just think, as I say, what I was alluding to earlier about them pulling the trigger too soon, he should have had time next season to see what he could get out of this team, because I've been impressed with what he can get out of it. I know there've been dips in form in the second half of this season, but that came with a bit of an overhaul in attack as well in January.
Yeah, well, people will poke fun at him being nominated for the EFL Manager of the Season, but that's not his fault. He didn't nominate himself, did he?
Yeah.
And we did say at the time that it seemed a bit strange that he was nominated, because there were definitely managers who had done better jobs this season. However, the fact he was nominated shows how far he's taken Hull. He didn't get that completely randomly, did he? He has done a cracking job at the time that he was at Hull. And we all know the owner, Achanila Charlie, is very ambitious. He wants to get to the Premier League. But getting rid of a manager who's quite clearly taking you in the right direction is simply mad. Mm-hmm. There aren't many clubs who are going in the right direction in the Championship. Hull definitely are, or at least they were. So when you have a manager who's got you doing that, you keep hold of him with all you've got. And I can only assume they've got someone else lined up who they think is top class, because if their second Liam Rosenior are based on results, that's simply ridiculous, isn't it?
I think another key thing is, well, he signed a new contract in December, so this would have been an expensive.
Forgot about that. Yeah.
This would have been an expensive sacking, so that's going to work against the club in terms of finances. They're going to have to,
The thing is, Justin, sorry to interrupt, but the thing is, they were 10th in December, and they've ended up finishing higher than they were when he signed that new contract. So
yeah, logically, it makes no sense. Logically, it makes no sense, does it? It doesn't. I mean, the sacking doesn't make any sense whatsoever from a logic point of view. If you do look at the underlying data, they have dipped in the second half of the season, but again, it's a relatively young and naive squad. You look at Fabio Carvalho, who was 21, Noah Hayo, 21. These are young players that came in. Jacob Greaves, 23, Regan Sater, 24, Alfie Jones, 26. They've got some experienced heads, but it is a relatively young side. And it's a young manager. There are going to be mistakes made. But actually, for the most part of this season, what they've missed is a little bit of substance in the final third. A striker who can really excel. Aaron Conley only made 13 starts. Liam Delap only made 26 starts. Billy Sharp, I can't even see him on my list. So there you go. I think the key thing here is that the club failed to really bring in someone who can score 15, 16 goals and lead that line as a number 9. And that's been the key difference for Hull in these tight games, because it's been the tight games that's held Hull back. It's not been the losses, it's not been poor performances. It's been where the games are balanced, overly balanced, a little bit boring, and they need someone who's in that final third who can put the ball in the back of the net. Because Fabio Carvalho came in and did his job, but they didn't have a striker, and that's a problem. They needed a forward, and he wasn't backed in that kind of way. So for me, that's not a Rosenior failing, that's an ownership failing.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see who the owners do get in next. As we were alluding to, Achanila Charlie, very ambitious. We know he's a keen watcher of football in his home country of Turkey. They've signed a lot of players from over there. So one would suspect the new manager is going to come from there. And look, appointments like that have to be approached with an air of trepidation, because they often go one of two ways. Although maybe they won't go down that route. Maybe they've seen Will Still becoming available and decided to move. Or maybe even someone like Danny Rawls, someone we know very well. I've got to say that there was a Cardiff fan who dropped me a message just before we started recording, Justin, and they mentioned Errol Bullitt. Yeah, as we've alluded, he's out of contract this summer, so that wouldn't be a massive surprise, would it?
Yeah, for the viewers on YouTube, I made an ooh face when you mentioned going for a Turkish manager, because Errol Bullitt came straight to my head. I was like, oh, he's a bit of contract dispute at Cardiff. You might fancy it. And I think contract wise, it's a bit of an easy one. I think the thing that bothers me.
He is Turkish, by the way. I think we should.
Yes,
if that wasn't clear, yeah. He was appointed by Cardiff last summer after many years in Turkey, so that's why the connection is there.
Yeah, and obviously, Ilikali has a lot of contacts in Turkey. I mean, he's Turkish. A lot of their agents, they work through a lot of agents for recruitment as well. So it's just an easy link. I think the thing that worries me a little bit as well is Ilikali surrounds himself with glamour and celebrity, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I'm not criticising his lifestyle, but there was that Survivor Series that went viral because he was playing, I think he was playing beach volleyball or football volleyball, whatever it was, with Ronaldinho. Yeah. So what I'm trying to get at there is maybe he wants big personalities to come into the club, big personality manager, big personality player. And I get a bit nervous. That may not be the case, but I think if you've got a club here who's making a decision based on, quote unquote, missing out on the playoffs and expectations not being aligned, it's a bit of a red flag for me. It's a bit of a red flag. And as I say, the underlying data hasn't been kind to Hull, but I'd rather evaluate the performance based on numbers, based on where they finished, based on where they can progress under Liam Rosenior, rather than missing out on the playoffs, because it's progress, not stunting themselves.
One thing that's got to be said is Hull's owner is very well thought of by Hull fans. They're very grateful for the ambition that he's shown, and little kind of gifts, I suppose, for the lack of a better term, such as paying for their away travel and stuff like that.
He's very generous. He's incredibly generous.
Yeah. They're little things which have gone a long way with Hull fans, but a great way to undo all that and all the confidence that they have in Atchell Charlie is by getting this appointment completely wrong and making Hull fans go,
exactly,
well, why did we get rid of Rosenior then? So that's going to be interesting to see with whoever they do get in. But Justin, let's end on a positive note, because there's one thing that we can take from this, from a Liam Rosenior perspective, and that is he will not be out of work for long, will he? No. He will not be short of offers.
Yeah, he certainly won't. He's a gifted manager and an incredible talker. And I think if he gets the right balanced squad, because he was building here at Hull, and I was liking what he was building. He turned Regan Slater from it was a £50,000 signing. He turned him into a multi-million-pound player. So if you've got a manager who can develop players like that, it's incredible. Jacob Greaves has gone on to new levels under him as well. He's already a good player, but he's become an absolute stalwart. So if you've got a manager there who can really get the best out of individuals, implement a style of play that does get results, needs improving, but it gets results, then bloody hell, you're going to have a long list of chairmen, owners, CEOs, sporting directors in your bloody WhatsApps, aren't you? It's going to be, he's going to be a busy man this summer. Hopefully he gets a break because he deserves it, because managers who get sacked for finishing 7th, I think it's very unfair. So hopefully he gets his feet up, takes a couple of weeks off, and you know what? If I'm Sunderland, why not?
Yeah, well, Sunderland is one of the clubs that I would have thought of. But I mean, just focusing on him as a manager, he's one of the most highly regarded young managers in the Championship, and he, as you alluded to, comes across extremely well in the media. And you've already mentioned his great record of developing players. I mean, Jadon Philogene another one, isn't he? Who obviously they signed for quite a bit of money, but he's turned him into one of the best wingers in the Championship. Liam Delap's another one. Keep in mind, when he was at Preston and Stoke last season, he looked awful, didn't he? And he's gone to Hull this season. Injuries have played a part in how much game time he's had, but he has looked like a completely different player and one of the most confident young strikers in the Championship. And look, he likes to have his team, he likes his teams to have the ball. That's a very popular way of playing for owners. And of course, what he's done in such a short time at Hull is very impressive and will certainly prick the ears of plenty of Championship sides. You're just looking at some of the clubs who are in the market for a manager. You did mention Sunderland just now. I think it'd be a good appointment there, although their fans seem set on Will Still or nothing else at this stage. I think he'd be perfect for Plymouth. I think if he's willing to go to Plymouth,
it's a long way.
Then it's a long way from Hull, admittedly, but that would be a cracking appointment for Plymouth, and I think it'd be a really good platform for him to show what he's all about. I wouldn't be surprised if there are other clubs who will fancy a change of manager over the next month or so, but even if it's not this summer, he'll be in a job before the end of the year because he's got so much potential, and I can almost guarantee he will be a Premier League manager at some point in his career. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy to let a setback like this affect him, and he'll be keen to prove that Hull should have stuck with him. So I think he's definitely going to bounce back from this. Justin, what do you think?
Incredible insight there. At some point, he may manage in the Premier League in the next 30 years' time. Yeah,
I mean,
I do.
That's still a rare thing to do,
I agree.
Justin.
It is. When I said it, I was like, actually, no, maybe I'm being a bit harsh on my colleague here. But you are right. He's
You've
already
just decided to be a dick today.
I have, yeah. It's a surprise recording. I'm not in the mood for messing about, Ryan. I'm here to talk shop, and I'm talking shop. He has already bounced back from one setback, hasn't he? Because, in my opinion, he was wrongly let go by Derby when they got in Paul Warne. Obviously, that was vindicated with Derby getting promotion after, a season after Paul Warne was appointed. But in my opinion, I do think Rosenior would have guided Derby into the Championship at the first time of asking, and probably battered a lot closer to the likes of Plymouth and Ipswich than Paul Warne did. He's already bounced back, and I think he'll bounce back again because I think he believes in himself. He's a manager that believes in himself. He knows what he wants to do with his teams, and it's very hard to get that out of young managers, especially.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on there, Justin. So there we go. This has been an emergency episode reacting to the news that Liam Rosenior has been sacked by Hull. Where will he end up next? Who knows? Who will Hull get in? Hopefully we'll find out sooner rather than later. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. And as we alluded to at the start of the show, we'll be back again tomorrow or Wednesday morning, depending on when you're listening to this, with our second tier team of the season. It's a big one, ladies and gentlemen, so we look forward to bloody seeing you then. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.